Let's go ahead and look at 5.3, and this is slope-intercept form. Okay, we're looking at linear equations, and there's a lot of different ways we can write linear equations, and this is by far my favorite, and it's slope-intercept form. So can I write linear equations in slope-intercept form? So let's start with, what does linear mean? Look at those first four letters of the word linear. It means a straight line. So when we graph these, we're going to have that straight line, which we'll do next lesson. So let's talk about what slope-intercept form is. The general equation for it is y equals mx plus b. The m is your slope. We did a lot of practice in our last one about how to find slope. So that m is going to be your slope next to that variable x. And then the plus b, that's your y-intercept. And let's talk about the definition of a y-intercept. It's where the equation or the line crosses the y-axis. So if we think of a graph, and this is my y-axis, and this is my x-axis, and let's picture a line crossing. Where it crosses the y-axis, that would be your y-intercept. Okay? That ordered pair is always going to be, the x will always be 0, and whatever the y value is, whatever number is the y, that would be your y-intercept, your b. So the first two examples, we are literally just trying to identify the parts of it. So this first example says y equals 5x minus 2. I'm going to go ahead and write our general equation below it. Y equals mx plus b. Looking at this, okay, we can hopefully identify very quickly what my slope is. My slope is the m, and my slope is equal to 5. We can write it as a fraction if we would like, and it would be 5 over 1. They mean the same thing. So slope is 5 here. Let's talk about our b. Well, my general equation says plus b. This doesn't say plus b. This says y equals 5x minus 2. We can change, though, any subtraction problem to addition. So I'm going to change this to plus a negative. So your y-intercept here is not a positive 2. It is actually a negative 2. So when you look at your practice, the first few problems are going to be like example 1. Now let's go ahead and look at example 2. The next problems in your practice are going to be like example 2, where what they want us to do is actually just write the equation. They are telling you what the m is, which is your slope, and they are telling you what the y-intercept is, or the b value. So they just want you to write it. So when we write it, we know it's y equals mx plus b. So all we have to do here is write y equals, what is the m? What did they tell you it was? Negative 1/3 x plus, what did they tell you b was? Negative 5. Those aren't too bad. All you're doing is writing it. Okay, and identifying the parts of it. So now let's go ahead and go on to example 3. In example 3, it wants us to write the equation again in slope-intercept form. When you see those words, we need to be thinking y equals mx plus b. And we're going to write the equation from this graph. Let's think about it. If we have to write this equation of the line, I need to find two things. I need to find what my slope is, and I need to find what my y-intercept is, and then we can write our equation. Let's find that y-intercept first. Where is the line crossing the y-axis? I'm going to go ahead and highlight the line in blue, just so we have a different color there. And let's go ahead and look at, and I'm going to trace the y-axis. So as I trace the y-axis, where does the blue line and the y-axis meet? Right here. And that's at -2. That's your y-intercept. I'm going to write the ordered pair. 0, -2. So we already have, this is your b. There's your y-intercept. Now what do we need to do in order to write the equation? Well, we need to find the slope. And so in order to find the slope here, I highly suggest we pick 2 points, just like we did in our last lesson. Well, you already have 1 point because we just wrote it down. So my second point I would pick would be right here at 1, 0. So if we're going to find the slope, let's go ahead and remember we got to label these x, y, x, y. I'm going to start with my blue. I'll start with my blue y value. So I have a -2. Remember, slope for a quick review is y minus y divided by x minus x. So I start with my -2 and my 0 minus nothing. And now we need to go to our x's. Because I started with my -2 for y, I have to start with my 0 for x, subtract a 1. And when I do the math here, I'm going to get a -2 divided by a -1. That is your slope. Well, we know a negative divided by a negative is really just a positive. So we know it's really just 2 over 1. Or we could just write the number 2. So to answer the question says, or the statement says, write an equation. Here's your equation. Y equals, what did we find for the slope? 2. X plus, and what did we find for that y-intercept over here, the b? -2. That is your equation for this line. And I want to stress to you, the equation and the line are the same thing, they just look different to our eyes. They represent the same information. Let's go to our last slide. This one's a little tricky. It wants us to write the equation in slope-intercept form given 2 points. So we know we need the equation to be in the form of y equals mx plus b. We know there are 2 things I'm going to need to find. To write the equation, I need to find my m, which is my slope. And I'm going to need to find my b, which is my y-intercept. Given 2 points, let's go ahead and jump in and find slope. xy, xy. Again, this was our very first lesson, was finding slope in this chapter. I'm going to go ahead and start with the 1. So I'm going to take 1, take away a -8. And then we have to look at our x's. Because I started with 1, I'm going to start with the 2, take away the 5. And 1 take away a -8 is a +9. Divided by 2 take away 5 is a -3. And if we simplify that, 9 divided by -3, my slope is just a -3. So we found our slope. But now I have to find my y-intercept. And so how we do this is we need to pick a point. So we need to just pick 1 point that they gave us. I'm going to go ahead and just use the point 2, 1. You know what the 2 is. What's the 2? It's your x. What's the 1? It's your y. Remember, we just found our m over here. Our slope is -3. What do we have left to find? We have to find that y-intercept. So this is how we're going to do that. I want you to think of the general equation. Y equals mx plus b. You know the m. It's -3. And because we picked 1 point, we have an x value, which is 2. So I'm going to plug that in here. We also have a y value, which is 1. I'm going to plug that in where I see the letter y. So what do we have left to solve for? Our b. And again, this will work with either one of the points. We picked the 2, 1. We could have used 5, -8. We would get the exact same answer. So you just pick one of the original points they gave you. Let's go ahead and let's solve for b. And when we solve for b here, we're going to be able to write our equation. So -3 times 2 is going to be that -6 plus b. Bring down my 1. Back to solving equations. How do I get my -6 to the other side? I'm going to add it. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And your b equals 7. We now have the 2 important parts for our problem. We have our m that we found at the very top, and we have our b. Many students get to this point and stop. You guys have done the hard work. Remember, the statement was write the equation. So here's the equation. Y equals, plug in your m, which is -3, x, plus your y-intercept, which is 7. That is the equation that goes with those 2 points. Great job. That problem is probably the trickiest, but great job, and time for practice.